seems to be checking out okay. Great information out. We're going to wait for some of the people to open up. Okay, we're on. First, I want to thank everybody for receiving this broadcast. This is Carol Lucas from Emergency Amateur Radio Bandwidth. We want to thank everyone for coming out. We have activated this system as a way to connect the repeater channels together. We begin to get a response. Is that better? I'll make sure everything's okay. Alright. We'll do a little bit more of this. Okay, why is that? That is really low. Broadcast thing. Is that better? Should be much clearer. Okay. Try this again. This is Carol Lucas from Emergency Amateur Radio Bandwidth. We want to thank everyone for coming out. We've activated this system as a way to connect channels between repeaters so we can get information out. This has been activated in response to the current spread of the PACE infection, or some have called it the Lazarus strain. Remember that much of the information we're going to relay to you today may or may not have been vetted or fact-checked. This isn't a television station. Raise it a little. Testing. Testing. Is that better? Well, I'm going to bring that down. All right. Thank you. Much better. Good. Okay. So remember that the information we will relay today may or may not have been vetted or fact-checked. This isn't a television station with editors or people who have time to run through this stuff. We are just a bunch of ham operators, as you can clearly see. So take this all as base information. We take things fast and loose here because we have to. So it's up to everyone who can hear this to do their due diligence, to do the research to themselves, to make sure that the information that you're receiving is accurate. Remember that this is effectively a worldwide connection, so thanks to our connectivity. So just because it's happening here may not mean it's happening where you are or in the same way. You'll see how folks are dealing with it. Can be much different depending on your geographic location. Yeah, as we get this repeater starting to dial in, it's going to become a little bit easier to hear too. So I thank everybody for their patience as they receive this. Now, thanks to our advanced teletype system that we've been using right now, we've allowed messages on board that we're going to try to answer if possible. Again, it's a dynamic system, so we want to thank any of the press that have arrived today, or even those that are in areas that are just simply looking for information. on various things, and sometimes just people who have radios in general who want to listen and hear exactly what's going on. So, and we may not have all the information on every zone either, but we can certainly try to get information for you if it's available. And I am going to try to answer some questions as we go along as well, but we have a lot to get on our first broadcast. So again, why were we activated? This is due to current infection that is currently migrating through the U.S. called PACE, and it is possible that this could have moved abroad. This is more information that we're trying to recover right now. We'll be a little bit more into that in a second. We believed it's important to apply resources and keep folks connected as well in these difficult times to give you important information on how to fight this illness, if we can. Information as we're in the effectively very early stages of this, although again some time has passed, a lot of this information has been very hard to come by, and it is an active situation. So where has this spread at this time? Well, to give you some bad news, at this time we're seeing much of the East Coast has seen activity of some way, shape, or form, heading from Miami, Florida, all the way into Boston, and parts of New Hampshire have reported some sort of sightings that we believe is the PACE infection, but some of these reportings are very difficult to confirm. One of the biggest problems that we have is that there are other situations that people can get into that believe that with all the activity that there's a possibility that they may be seeing people that they believe are infected and are not. People just walking around are not, which is part of the reason why we're doing this for general population. So we're hoping that a lot of people are able to get some of this information. So consider these results coming prevalently from city centers as well, where we're going to get the most connectivity. So most of the repeaters that we have out there are coming from a city or other locations that have higher density. Our hotspots right now are going to be considered Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, of course, and Atlanta, Georgia. We're kind of seeing the most activity for movement and seeing people get together. These are also, Atlanta, Georgia has been where we received the most amount of reports from in general too. But we're also expecting that New York will be added to that list very soon for reasons we'll get into. We were trying to get activity on Canada, but they're handling things a little bit differently there. They've been calling this a version of a prion disease. Another version was saying wasting deer disease, or the most official title of bovine spongiform encephalopathy. For those out there who don't know the big words, and even I'm not very good at them, most people know this is mad cow disease, or a variant thereof is what they're calling it, although nothing has shown that they're even connected in any way. They're still using that form of communication. Unfortunately, this has caused some problems in reporting, since they're reporting sightings much differently. What's assumed is that they are having cases, but the most of the reports that we've heard are coming generally from the Ontario and Ottawa areas, usually surrounding the Great Lakes. And we don't know exactly why that is. It could be a spillover from some area, or maybe because the water in the area, we can't be clear about that. Again, a lot of this stuff we're going to get back into because it's a crisscross. But why haven't we seen much activity towards the center states? Well, we think we have. Chicago and Detroit specifically have reported cases, and the spread has begun to reach the interior from what we're tracking. His biggest concerns were originally that the cities were going to be the most populated, obviously, seeing the highest growth rates, but unfortunately we're seeing the most reports that are kind of flying under the radar in country areas or county areas or places that are wooded or outlanded, that are where these infections are very hard to battle or to search out or to find. So although these cities are going to be considered the most dangerous, or any place with a high population density, these country areas are becoming more and more areas that are hard to discover, or hard to uncover what's going on in them. And because these bigger areas that are easier to maintain and easier to control, if you will, get most of the attention, and that attention is now, it's very difficult to see the areas that we're not seeing is really what it is. So we have heard a lot of reports from country areas, in any sort of wooded. The more rural things get, the more that we see issues and reports of problems that people simply can't address. So we keep that in mind. So are we seeing cases in the West? At this time, we're not really sure as yet. Most of the West that we're considering is Nevada towards California. We do, though, the governor of California has authorized a PMC, or a private military resource, to check the homeless encampments as local law enforcement are being used to clear streets. There have been reports of skirmishes in these areas, but we can't be sure if that activity is due to infection or something completely different. There is no official police report on it since they're outsourcing the jobs. So what we're hearing basically is that police forces are trying to go for one-on-one from house to house, or going into areas such as homeless encampments or drug dens, and doing anything if they can in those areas. But again, this is more very quick and dirty, while these private veteran groups, if you will, or private military groups, I should say, have been a lot more active in areas that are most concerning for them. So again, it's very difficult to get any information that, and they've made no public announcements regarding it. So whether they're seeing results or not, we don't know. Lastly, we were doing some research on Mexico a little bit prior to the broadcast, and Mexico is simply refusing to report. They've been making it very clear that the concept of what they're calling undead people is highly frowned upon in their society, and anyone they came into contact with, they believe, was under the throes of this infection would be, as they humbly put it, dispatched. Whether this has happened or not is unknown. I think it'll probably stay that way until we get someone who runs into something and can begin to post these things. And that reminds us that there are very increased amount of scrutiny that's being put on social media platforms that are posting images of attacks by infected, and blanking them out, or any information that would say basically the same kind of context that they were putting it in. You're going to see a lot of stuff that's being pushed aside, deleted, destroyed, without notification. We heard a bunch of reports like that, but again, it's very difficult to say what people are posting, or because some of the pictures you receive are very gruesome. So stuff that gets put around like that is, may be taken down for other reasons. So it's hard to maintain whether this is being done to for which directive reason it is. Local jurisdictions at this time are trying to clear out areas in the form of what's called a wellness check. They're going house to house, police, fire, SWAT, all sorts of agencies have been called there to help with that, in areas where they're able to, and going from place to place to make sure that people are okay and are responding. There's a secondary reason to that too that we get into in a little bit, but National Guard did try to assist, but they were told distinctly to stand down while they began performing. National Guard would have been seen as intrusive or potential breach of Fourth Amendment. So anywhere the National Guard has been activated, they've been relegated to sweep and clear missions, as well as protection of local infrastructure such as state houses, power plants, etc. Anything that could break down, or communication, that's where their National Guard is making their biggest stand at. Rest assured, if there is an official report somewhere, a state of emergency has been enacted and the National Guard has been activated. So that's the general report. Many people are reporting that 911 systems are being down, or ability to have somebody come for certain things are concerning, let's just say. So so that's something that a lot of people are going to have to be aware of. Again, that's dependent on the area you are. Some people are having no problems whatsoever, while especially in these bigger areas. Again, time to report. Carol Lucas, emergency amateur radio bandwidth, continuing to discuss on the PACE infection. So one problem we are already hearing about, and why discussion of wellness checks and house checks, is because reports have been coming out that people are housing infected. Now, what does that mean? Think of it like this. Imagine if you have a close relative under the throes of this condition. With all the information, you might try to hang on to them. You may have been told that maybe there's a religious reason, a moral reason, or even a cure or a treatment, or different things that we've heard really put around in different areas. And most of the information that they're receiving is not true, but they're taking steps that if there is some sort of hope, many people will cling to that hope. But this could result in huge problems, which we've heard about already in New York, which is why we think they'll be next. Big skyscrapers full of infected is something that really does not allow me to sleep well at night. To the length and breadth of which people are doing this, we don't have an answer. What we do know is involving this infection is that it can possibly do a lot of damage and spread very easily, and there's concerns about that. So if you are for any reason harboring someone who is sick, we're going to get into something a little bit later, but there is reasons to deal with that immensely and quickly. In some of the southern and interior states, we're hearing a lot of activations of militias and deputizations of individuals to help in dealing with this. A lot are using the words clearing out as well. We don't know the full illegalities of that, and we don't know the full activity of what's going on. We do understand that some militia troops are getting together and taking necessary steps for their activation, getting together and kind of joining forces, if you will, to the length or level that is happening. We don't know. We do know that a lot of survivalists and other people have basically come to bear. Some people are really sharing resources and helping each other out, which is a good thing, obviously. As for federal, they have made a very clear point and have said that their full power is directed at the problem by providing support from FBI, Homeland Security, Civil Defense, CDC, etc., etc. They have a national disease department in the military that I've heard is very involved right now, but most of that is information that is not being privy to and has not been shared with us. Most of it has been considered top secret. But what these agencies are saying is the same canned response, that they have things well in hand, and although things seem to be increasing, they're doing their best to control the spread, mitigate injuries and infection. I will let each area that is in their respective area, you can let us know exactly how effective or ineffective those things are. For those people in Pittsburgh and Harrisonville, I think it was, and Philadelphia at least, and Atlanta, Georgia, we were not hearing good things. So for those of you out there who are now looking at this from the standpoint of saying what should you look out for, we'll give you the directive here, which is, it's pretty simple stuff here. The biggest thing that we were seeing were people standing like statues or staring into the sky. Many of them will sit in one spot and simply look up or look around. Anybody that's lumbering around should probably be avoided. If you see someone with an injury that looks unnatural, then avoid them. If you were in closing distance to someone trying to strike up a conversation, if they fail to talk, then I think the best thing to do is to avoid them. Most who have completely fallen under this illness will only be able to grunt or growl, and more like it's a raspy release of air that has no control, almost like a noise, is what we're hearing most. The eyes are usually a milky white, although that's not true in all conditions. And then when they come at you to attack, they usually move slow, deliberate, and harsh, and they try to reach. It's very distinct. Their primary attack is gripping their targets and biting anything they can get their hands on. But just remember, this bite should be considered fatal, so it is the thing that you need to avoid at all costs. Reports are their grip is considered unnaturally strong. They're also going for very deep bites. These are not superficial wounds. If you've seen any pictures of them, they're very horrifying, and again, the reason why we've seen a lot of people remove anything, and why a lot of news agencies have been so problematic to post this stuff or give it to people, is because anything they show is graphic, and there's really no effective way to distribute that in some cases. So we did have somebody say some are slow and some are fast. We have heard of younger infected that can move at a pretty quick pace. We don't know the situation between each one. Some of them are going to be how, again, based on your geography and based on what you run into, things can change. So again, some of this stuff is, again, we're doing the best with the information we have. It is a very dynamic illness. We also have noted that they're usually covered in blood of some kind or some sort of injury. It's sometimes very easy to see. Sometimes it may be more difficult. And look for anybody covered in blood. I usually want to avoid that, obviously. But there has been some reference to a mucus sort of material that is not blood, but something that's more like a clear to a black, or an ooze that they have. We don't know where that comes from or what that is. Again, anything that they have on them, I would say just avoid as you can. The truth is, these things are probably deaf. They probably have serious brain damage. So the biggest thing is avoidance is key, and every agency we spoke to about this was very quick to say number one is avoidance. But the other thing is they were using things like stealth, and they said this shouldn't be that hard, that avoidance would be fairly good. So if you have them, infected individuals that are standing in an area that you can look up, and they're not paying attention to you. One thing that they did say was that due to their activity and the way they sway and they go back and forth, that's very easy, and a lot of these National Guard troops have reported that it's been difficult to spot them, especially at night, because they don't move like we do. We actually move, function. You see people move, animals move, that kind of thing. Your eyes will parse to them in these situations. We're not having that happen. Okay, so I'm going to make my mark here. Again, Carol Lucas, Emergency Amateur Radio Bandwidth, continued reporting on the base infection. So, how do you deal with someone that is infected? This has been the question that we all want to know, especially if you are attacked, and that's really the place where the most concern is. We've been told not to say this, and it is ill-advised it's just ill-advised in general, just to get up close and personal. If you can avoid in any way, do that. But if you are in a situation where defense is required, traumatic brain injury of any kind is the word we're hearing. Spinal injuries are another, obviously a little bit more difficult. But the short of it is, some have said that just shoot them in the head. But any sort of serious brain damage just shuts them down. And we really have no idea why. Some of the more lighter... Oh, we're disconnected. There we go. Okay, so do we have a break in the... So we're hearing Pennsylvania has... Okay. Yes. No word really on Alaska at this time. What we did get a report on Alaska, something about the cold. We're trying to follow up on something that's temperature related, and I'm hoping in the next broadcast that will be available. So we'll get more to that. I gotta write that down. Yeah, cold. Remember that next time. We probably should add some more of that on this one, especially the northern states as we move into the winter. That's something that's going to be important. But at this time, being so early in, a lot of places don't really have as much activity, and it's very sparse. A lot of things, like, people are really going about their days as normal. This is something that was very shocking to us, that people are going to work, they're doing normal things, even with things going on the way they are. And we expected a little bit more reaction from people, but we didn't see that. But we're going to get a little bit more in that too. So yeah. So how do you deal with someone that's infected with this traumatic brain injury of some sort? Even light damage seems to shut them down. And we don't know the situation of that. Some were showing that actual neck injuries were causing, basically it was shutting them down for a long period of time, and then they were coming back for some of them. But then some possible whatever spinal cord injuries or that kind of thing, any sort of communication between the brain and the body. So we're expecting that there's something wrong with that system that does not allow communication strictly between the brain and the body. Again, that's something we're going to get in a little bit more too. So yeah, so I'm just going through this right now. A lot of the notes that we have here was put together really at last minute, and some of the information from a lot of professionals out there that I want to thank for giving us this stuff and making it available for us to get over to you. So yes, the shoot in the head thing was exactly what most National Guard, militia are going to say that. But again, other than that, nothing is. That's the other thing. Once this has happened, one thing that we were told was nothing will stop someone that this is done to. And we've heard hacked off limbs, injuries to legs. They just keep coming in some of the most gruesome displays you've ever heard. Obviously, if an injury to a leg or anything like that would be very detrimental to their ability to attack. But again, the idea that if you're in a situation where problems are occurring, we want to give you all the information. So I'm seeing a little bit of a transmission issue again. That's okay. If anybody has a problem still receiving that, we're getting information from everybody pretty clearly, so I appreciate that. Yes, we are. I am going to get into some stuff about the truth about infection, which will come about as soon as I can get to it. So how do you contract this? To be honest, we don't really know. Although many believe that people are bitten or come into contact with infected blood. There's simply, other than the bites, there is simply no rhyme or reason to it at this time. We do know that people with severe illnesses or immune compromised are most affected, but we haven't seen that in children. So children usually have to have some sort of direct contact for them to have any chance of being infected, even the most sick ones. If you have sick asthma problems like that, we didn't see any of those problems in younger kids. So that's good that children are mostly not affected, but again, older, any of these severe problems and stuff like that, we just saw people that were, for lack of a better term, keeling over and just coming back as infected and just very destructive. So the best suggestion we've received is in a multifold response. Now, obviously, we've talked to various agencies, various places, and said, okay, everybody should throw stuff at us and let's see what sticks, which is where we're at. And one said, don't do any drugs you don't know where they came from. Now, that seems pretty much a given. One of the big things that they said early on was that there was some sort of tainted drug that may have done this. Baby dust, I believe, was the name of it. That was one of those, and we've heard so many counters to that. We can't be 100% sure on that, but I think the standing idea and why we share it was because taking strange drugs or new drugs or doing anything out of the ordinary or being creative with your drugs might not be a good idea. So we'll just stick with that word. Obviously, CDC, any of these other ones said boil your water, make sure you cook any food thoroughly, and that's kind of the usual stuff that we'd expect from any, especially survivalists, preppers, that kind of thing. We're very good about, giving us information on their methods. Again, their methods, they're not something that we can really rely on as being credible, scientific, whatever. They're just really good ideas. So we're going to go with that. We're going to add another suggestion to this that we've continued to hear over and over again. They're suggested avoiding bugs like mosquitoes, any infestations, rats, even flies. Some have said don't get them near any food source, because that could be something. Anything that can be considered a carrier. And to make this clear too, that we have not seen instances of any animals that were showing signs of infected beyond the stuff that Canada's reporting. So I don't know how much Canada's in the know on that, or if they have some information we don't know. Again, anything that they gave us really didn't match up to what we were receiving, but that's neither here nor there. It's not everybody is scrambling to figure out what's going on and do their own reporting. So we're going to try not to judge anybody badly on the actions that they take. At this point, taking any action is probably better than no action at all. Let's put it like that. So we just kind of got to get our apples in a row, and we're going to have to leave that to we are an emergency system. Our job is to get the information out, not to figure out how to put it into nice little duck line rows for everybody. Makes our job a little bit harder, but that's the way we got to relay the information. So how are people reacting so far? Well, the government has put out quarantine instructions on any area that has seen an increased infection rate. But many of these areas that do not have these even small rates have had nothing. There are no quarantines, no blockades, no any of that stuff, no restrictions on coming in or out. And most have just said simply they're going to try and wait it out. People who are sitting in their houses watching the news or waiting for something to happen is pretty much the way we've seen it right now. This is a combination of unawareness on how to survive, I believe, and in some cases lack of preparation. That people just, if you don't have training, you're gonna have a problem. And that's one of the problems that we're running into, is people are simply waiting for somebody to come rescue them. So if you don't have any training, many areas right now are not under the effects of this. Again, now's the time to hone your skills, as you may need them. And I'm going to say my 3 favorite words right now are going to be location, location, location. And I'm not considering any place effectively safe or potentially safe. But people in numbers and defensibility are always going to be big things. And I've seen a lot of people get that wrong, because a lot of people want to go it on their own, and having friends is going to be a big thing right here. And especially stuff like access to fresh water, food supplies, those are good as well. We're hearing that a great deal of people are already prepping bunkers in case they need them. And if you know someone that has one of those, you may want to reach out. If not, there's nothing wrong with making the place you are defensible. And that means even buildings, things that, some of these places in New York, making stuff defensible, working with the people that are around you. This is a time to start making friends, but because of a unified enemy. So we still have a ton of resources right now. So making stuff like learning how to capture rainwater, plant food, start building your resources in the areas you're in. Maybe people who didn't have cars or didn't have ways of moving around. There's ways of activating that stuff now and starting to do stuff. So I'm just going to say, while everyone is out picking up toilet paper, the guy picking up the seeds is going to be the guy that's going to survive. So especially the biggest thing that we were also talking about too is people who have access to arms and ammunition, and the ability to get those things. Now, this does not mean go out and loot. It does not mean go out and take things from other people, because it's just harming your own community never does anything right. So you want to go out and make friends, and people using tools in tandem, things of that nature, are going to be big. And the more tools, the better. And that's not just with items or weapons or things like that. People are the biggest tools that you're going to have in your life. And I hope that didn't sound too insulting. But yeah, the idea of having people around you that are going to work on your side. And this is a point too, we're talking to people who are going to be having stressful situations. But anyway, for those that have their go bags and are ready to go, this is a time to wait. And just feel it out. Know if your area is being affected. Because remember, again, not everybody is having a problem. So some people are saying, yeah, they go. Well, if you just went and there's nothing going on, you just went for nothing. And your resources are going to be shy as it is. So make sure that those resources are available. We're still talking about Alaska. Kenai is the only refinery in Alaska that has direct pipeline connection, and the power of the plant is run on natural gas as long as we... Yeah, so that's one thing. I'm going to run that out too. A lot of the National Guard were going to any of the power stations and doing protective services from that route, and we're seeing that be, from what I'm hearing, is very effective. So again, those power sources right now should be okay. We don't know if there's going to be any damage from other things like that, but again, there's always stuff that's going on that we're not 100% on, but they're there. Okay, so, and yeah, again, power is going to be huge. So that's the other thing, making sure that you have some sort of power source down the road is going to be big. But unfortunately, in the interim right now, power sources are a lot more difficult to come by. Again, I don't want to get too far from the weeds. A lot of the prepper guys came up to us and told us about, do this now, do this, gas, fuel, that kind of stuff. Again, this is a timing thing. If you do things earlier than you need to, you stocked up on a product that is perishable. So we're not going to suggest people do any of that right now, unless obviously you're in Philadelphia or Atlanta, which in those cases you might want to consider finding another place to stay if you can't stay there. But again, we've talked about a lot of stuff with that and kind of full circle with it. Some people had asked if now is the time to go mobile. I don't know if I said this or not, so I'm going to go back over it if I did. And I'm going to say right now, unless you absolutely have to, no. You don't want to be mobile unless you... And now's the time to dig in. And the reason is because you don't know where it's going to be next. And there's a possibility that what the information is we're hearing, even though it may sound far-fetched, is maybe accurate. There are some places that are doing very well with this infection and staying well ahead of it. I think there was a place in Tennessee, at least, and Virginia, and Kentucky. This is a lot of stuff that came up earlier today, so I wish I could remember all the different places. But in those zones that were very considered highly reported on, were doing a very good job mobilizing their people together. And when they were able to form sort of forces, if you will, they were able to clear some areas out and have a very good effectiveness. Some of that we heard in Pennsylvania too. In the western parts of Pennsylvania had some, I want to say mobile, but that's going to be wrong. Basically the midwestern, northern part of the state, there was a couple places that mobilized very well. And that's where you get together with the groups and say, okay, we're going to make moves and take care of this so that there's not going to be a problem. Yeah, because if you're jumping and you're going to another place or going to some place that you don't realize is what's going on, you might move yourself into a place that's not conducive. Just here's the biggest trick we're going to say to everybody is keep these broadcast radios open. Keep any of these channels of communication open. Any way of reaching out to people is handy, as we're pretty sure that once things are ready, you're going to know. It's going to be very clear that people should take activity, and we don't want to tell people to take activity unless they absolutely have to. If you look out your window and everything is hunky-dory, we've been advised by many not. Don't do anything. You can always prepare. It's basically never too late to prepare unless it's too late to repair. But yeah, that's the thing is you have to take the steps, and everybody should be prepared regardless of what situation that we're in. But yeah, have a radio, have a crank radio. Keep in touch with people. Make sure that you know who has all the resources, what you're bringing to stuff, what you have to do, what your responsibilities are. And like I said, once you know, you know. And this is where some intelligence gathering is going to come into handy too, because some people are very good at that while, down the road. But now you just work to get it all together to find the people you need to be with and how you're going to have things set up. And it's those stuff's going to be very clear. Just remember that there's a lot of people out there too that have overestimated their chances. I'm going to say that in the most constructive way I can. It probably does sound rude, and that's okay if it did. But you and your college friends staying together in your dorm to hold this out may not be the best thing to do. It's just a little input there. There's this thing about saying when you are too naive to know, you're already too naive to know. Take that with whatever you need to take it with. So we have time for another announcement for Carol Lucas here, Emergency Amateur Radio Bandwidth, broadcasting continuously on regarding the PACE virus and the emergency bandwidth. So again, I want to thank everybody that came out to be a part of this discussion too. Be careful and stay safe and armed. That's very good information. 50 miles from town and fully stocked. There you go. We had one of our tellers come in. I'm already at my cabin 50 miles from the... Exactly. There are people, like I said, that are already taking steps while other people aren't taking steps and they're not doing anything. I don't know what area you were in, and I'm not asking But that's the idea of saying that there are certain areas that's going to be the best thing to do. Some, like I said, some places, I don't know why anybody's staying in a high-rise building right now. The first thing they broadcast early about people keeping people in areas or having housing infected in basements, in rooms and stuff like that, just immediately wanted me to get out of any city that I could ever be involved in. Thankfully, we're more rural here, and we're in a response area, so it's a lot of the stuff that we had set up here was set up for nuclear stuff back in the Cold War things. We even do have our own fallout shelter, which really does help out a lot, which is where we're going to be falling back to, so that we can continue to broadcast to you. But those things were tools that were given to us that allowed us to have a communication. And here we have a group of people who are a club that know to get together. One of the things that one of the other guys said was, obviously with militia, goes into the idea of like a gun club or something. There's groups that have come together, that train together in ways that aren't just military or first responders. And those people have, they're going to have a leg up. So, yeah, I think that's good. Only thing we could do is just survive and stay alive. Be prepared. Scouts taught me young, and I never forgot also. All preppers need to remove all info from the next pictures, diaries, anything the scavengers will look for. That's a good one. You know what? This is something that I didn't think about until now. Thank you for bringing that up. There's been a lot of people to say that if you're leaving to bring stuff like identifiables, licenses, birth certificates, what was it? Yeah, like you own a house or something. So any of those land things. Some cases those are great, and if you have them, great. But in the end game of it, I would keep a lot of that stuff to my chest. That's just me, so I don't know exactly how everybody else is on that. But I would not be giving out my information to people, even if you're leaving a bad area. Like, let's say you left Atlanta and things are really, really bad. You want to at least know that the places that you own, if they don't get, trashed in the process. And I've heard a lot of people who were coming in to help did not do very well at helping. They did a lot of help in destroying, which is, I think, one of the reasons why the National Guard got called back, was because a couple of houses basically got destroyed, being quote-unquote cleared out. So that's what that was. So yeah, as for when we get back to this though, ammo's the new currency. Yeah, canned and dry food along with water purification. Now that's something that we have to really go into, because a lot of the water purification stuff that we had was expendable. So that's going to be something permanent wise, not just thinking of I went to a store and purchased a little thing. Understanding how to purify water is very important. It's a filtration thing, and it takes a little understanding, but it's not that hard. Look it up. You'll get it, no problem. So, okay, back to this. So scientists, they're saying that they are currently working on this thing full swing. We were able to get information from a ton of different agencies here, but the wording is that the resources are limited, and that's been the biggest problem. Is they don't have, and I hate to say this like this, but they don't have enough sick people to work on with enough faces in front of them. In the situation, the way I understand it is you need someone who is actively infected to do it, that once the infection has gone, that the secondary things that are causing the infection are dying off or somehow being processed out or being eaten away. That's a bad thing to have happen if you're going to do any sort of research, the way I understand it. That I want to do research on something. Okay, well, it's dead and gone. Well, nothing you can do there. So yeah, they needed real stuff, and this became a big problem, especially obviously transportation and that kind of thing is going to be huge. But there was a bunch of hospitals that are already closed, and it's no shock to that, dealing with it. So And not only that, it's highly restrictive in what you're going to do or where you're going to do it. So here we have places that are already closing, schools are closing, all these other people that are dealing with the situation with the way they're dealing with it, and it's caused a big vacuum when it comes to the researchers that are going to be working on this. So not only do we have a few people to work on it, we don't have a lot of the I don't want to say this. I'm just going to say infected people to work on to do it, and the other thing is the places that you can work on them in a safe way, because again, we can say that the bites are what's causing it, but the truth is and I think that's a little bit later too, we don't know the full details of that, and we said that earlier too. Okay, so so the final thing on the scientists were we talked to CDC and 2 other major hospitals, as well as a couple of different schools, that unfortunately that all we have right now is nothing. There's no inoculations, no preventative measures, no form of treatments, no hints of cures. If anybody's telling you that information, they're completely and utterly wrong. And we have heard that. I think even one of them quoted a civil defense agency that said that the shelters have treatments of some sort. Their treatment has been euthanization. I didn't want to have to say that, but I think that that's what they're doing. I think that if you go to these shelters, it's a positive, negative, and if you get positive, the next step is basically being escorted someplace where it's been nice knowing you, kind of thing. But they're going to probably get mad at me for saying that, or they may even, with the situation going on right now, it is what it is. But here's the really bad news. So we've had a lot of discussions, and we don't think this is new from the standpoint of being the first occurrence. So this may not be the first time that this has hit us. What we looked up was we had a report that was submitted to us regarding a problem called ataxic neurodivergent satiety deficiency syndrome. It's a lot of words. They're very big. Basically, it means that those who were affected by this had a need to feed. They had a system that was causing them to want to eat, or became very hungry, but again showing the same sort of problems of neurodeficiency, the brain shutting down. This was a report that was accredited to a Steve Schultzman, MD, Mass General at Harvard Medical. And this could put a big dampener on what many are saying should be the hunt for patient zero in scientific circles. Many people have said, well, where we're going to go to find this, and we're believing the information we have is completely wrong, and that this is not the first time this has happened, or that we're even close to a patient zero. So what does that mean? We don't know. What changed? I don't know. Somehow people are... The biggest change that's happened is somehow people are acquiring this illness without having any contact with anyone that's had it, and it's by an unknown vector, and that's where we are with that. Could this be from an insect like the Black Plague or something along those lines? We don't know. We do know that those bitten by an infected will acquire the infection almost 100%, and it's considered, what I read, as a functional neurological disorder, meaning that it may not kill you, but you're not getting out of it. You're a shell. You're not the same person that you were before. Reading a little bit more stuff from the teletype. So, we do have a belief system on what the vector is now, but what it will take you is it's going to ruin everybody's night, even worse than any of the other stuff that we've gone over. And we want to take this with our scrutiny glasses on as high as we can, if we could. And I know that some of you have heard the rumors, and we've done a complete line of inquiry on this. But I'm going to tell you this now, and no scientist, no politician or media guy will ever relay this. It takes a private emergency system like ours that would ever put any information like this out there. But after advanced scrutiny, we've come to the conclusion that those who are considered infected are being reported as dead in the traditional sense. And what do we mean by dead? They have no pulse, no blood pressure, no oxygen level, barely any brain activity at all. And they're being driven by a force that we can't completely understand. Now, there's no way to completely understand if that's true, but that's what we have. And the reason that we've been told this over and over again is that in effect it is fatal. That it is death. And the reason that it happens is because people die. And then when they die, they somehow come back. It was a very sobering thing to discover or to hear. And again, I want to leave all options open in any way, shape, or form that we can. But that's where we are. But with that in mind, question remains, can we stop this? And if the result is that whoever dies comes back, I think the truth is we're in trouble. So I want to thank everybody that's given us input on the teletype. Amazing information that you've handed over to us. If you would like to see more of this and hear more of this emergency amateur radio bandwidth, please let us know. We'd like to continue to give it to you, provide it to you if you'd like it. As we go through the progression of the PACE infection throughout both the U.S. and abroad. And we're going to continue to get some more information with this. On a somber note, we hope that everyone has a good night. We hope that we wish you the best in the most difficult times. This is Carol Lucas from the Emergency Amateur Radio Broadcasting System, signing off. See you soon.